What is going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. BobbyFi with my man Eric Sheets Haber. Before we get into it, I want to remind everybody, sign up for TrueDFS.com. We've gone to premium now, and we've got Sheets' Sheets. We've got all of my plays of the day, all my percentages of owned, and my bets of the day, which actually came in really handy yesterday, especially the prop bets were
Oh,
pretty
did they?
good.
Tell me about this. What happened?
Well, there were some really easy ones, like Alec Mills was a 3.5 strikeout guy, and he, I think he had, I don't know, he ended up with 6. Pretty much everybody got there except for one. I can't remember what the other prop bet was off the top of my head, but it was good. It was good stuff. And we're also doing the, I do my home run, which I don't expect to win those, but I think I got about half of them right, which is pretty weird to, I only named 8 players or whatever, but that's going to be profitable because nobody's 2-1 to hit a home run. And yeah, so it's going good. I'm just trying to get all that stuff loaded so we have more content. We've got a bunch of cool things that we're going to be implementing very shortly. And we appreciate those of you guys very much who have been there with us throughout the whole thing. And we're fine tuning this and getting it ready. We're doing as much as we can for baseball and all the other sports that Sheets is all over. But also we want to have it ready for football season to really ramp up and really get things going. And I know I did a live sweat show last night just for about 10 minutes. There wasn't a whole lot going on. Nobody was really doing crazy well, but people did like that we're doing it. And hopefully we'll keep doing that. Sometimes it'll be sporadically. I'm going to have a tentative time between 10 Eastern and 11 Eastern that I'm going to sort of try and do it throughout most of these days. So guys, tune in just for that. I'll announce it in the Discord when we're going to do it. But yeah, we appreciate it. And with that said, Sheets, I did okay. I did well on that DraftKings last night, poorly on FanDuel. I know it wasn't your favorite night, but why don't you just mention it real quick and then we'll jump into today's.
Like they say sometimes when describing your basketball team, we may be small, but we're slow. That was my night last night. I did poorly on DraftKings, but at least I got blown up on FanDuel. But the thing about FanDuel was that I had 80% Mets that scored 15 runs and no help. So it was just one of those days, and I knew going in, right, that it was going to be a tough day for me, and I played that 3,500 sadly anyway. I didn't know when there was going to be another one. I just did it, and I just got crushed. Anyway, that's what they call it, daily fantasy sports. We are on to the next one, and I am really, really like this slate. I know exactly what I'm going to do, given the information I have available now. And assuming nothing gets rained out or and nothing gets scratched and nothing gets whatever, I'm pretty sure that I know where I'm going. So let's see what happens.
Okay, let's do it. Let's go game by game, and we'll get into our favorite spots of the day. I think this is actually, I do like this slate better than I did like yesterday's slate. Although I actually liked the variance in yesterday. It's hard when when everybody goes out and scores 15 runs and stuff. It becomes your guys pay off, and then you turn out they're worthless because too many guys did. All right, let's talk about Washington and Miami. This is I think Trevor Rogers, given the nature of the slate, is on my list, but I don't see myself really going crazy with him towards the end. I actually think that there's some of the Washington bats are interesting again. Soto is red hot. It doesn't matter lefty or righty. They left him in the game last night when they were up by 15 runs so he could get his other at bats. He really tried to break out of what he called a slump because he led the league in ground ball percentage, and he's really trying to elevate the ball now. He's hit 4 home runs, or is it 5 home runs over the last 4 games? So for me, this game is basically just a little bit of interest in Washington and a little bit of interest in Miami. But I'm just saying again, that Miami lineup that Lester got to last night, and one of the last things I said on our live show was, boy, maybe we should be playing John Lester. Yep. Just because of how awful this Miami lineup shook out, especially they took out, Marte didn't even play. They had no Chisholm, and they basically missed their best 3 hitters. So I can see an argument for some of these Miami guys today. I'm having trouble falling in love with it, not just because of yesterday, but this is not a great lineup to try to attack. And it's not like anybody you're getting a great discount. So a little bit of Washington for me, mostly Soto and Turner. Maybe Ryan Zimmerman if he's in the lineup at 2.2, even though he's always, there's always a risk of getting a righty to come in later in the game and he'll be pinch hit for. But that's who I'm looking at right now. Even Josh Harrison's really cheap at 2.4. So I have a little bit of interest in Washington, but didn't really have a ton of interest overall in this game. How about you?
My initial look does not really lead me to too much in this game. Trevor Rogers at 10K is not really for me, and I forget where I saw it, but there was something about possibly getting his innings managed or something towards as we get down the second half of the season. I don't know if that's the case, but at 10K, I don't feel like finding out, honestly.
Yep.
And on the other side, we know how I do now. I mean, like, team scores 20 runs, they're not getting my money the next day. It's just the way it's going to be. And now, as opposed to, I'm going to whine a little bit. Soto, they let that, but they took Turner out with the bases loaded.
Yeah, that was annoying.
He was the one guy I had, that I needed to help me a little bit. But I'm not getting too much of anything on. What I will say is that the one team that, when I was doing my analysis, that I'm kind of intrigued with is Miami a little bit, the hitting side. They're not going to be my favorite opportunity by any stretch, but certainly they're in the conversation. So depending on how many lineups I play, I might get to some of that, whether it be Marte, Duvall, Aguilar. So I do have some interest there, but overall, I think I have better targets, both pitching and hitting, on the slate.
Yeah, that's sort of where I'm at as well. But I do think those guys are the ones you'd want if you are going to play them. And even first base is kind of a weird position. So you get the middling price of Aguilar, which, by the way, really threw me off yesterday because I just needed to go a little higher or a little lower and I would have been perfect. But I had so much Aguilar.
I will say that as one-offs, or whatever, I think Josh Harrison at 2,400 remains cheap. What else in this game? I do think Duvall is pretty good at 4,400 even. And so those are the guys and Aguilar, as I mentioned, 4,100. So I think those three stood off as kind of the cheaper, like the value-ish type one-offs in this game. But overall, it's kind of like a middling type game.
Yeah, I hear you there. All right, let's jump over to Philadelphia and the Yankees. But it's pretty rare to see a pitcher who's going to be the main chalk being the National League pitcher going into Yankee Stadium. Having said that, I think that Aaron Nola is one of the top, potentially the top pitcher on the slate. That's where I am with this Yankees lineup in general right now. I'm not a huge fan, and it's a great hitter's park. There's a lot of guys I could make arguments for, but I don't see anybody that I feel like I need to have. McCutchen is really, really cheap. That's the one thing I would say. I'm having trouble with any individual bats that I would want in this game.
Right. So, with respect to the bats, now we'll get back to the pitching. With respect to the bats, I had some idea of playing some Philly guys, but once again, I just find other teams a little more appealing. But with that said, I mean, McCutchen, Brad Miller, Segura, Jankowski, Harper. I do think that if I play 20 lineups, I think I might get to some of that.
Yep. With
respect to Nola, for me, he's not going to be my guy in my hand-built bigger buy-ins. I'm just going to go a different route. For me, he's going to rate to be probably the top pitcher, but only by not all that much. And I just think that his ownership is going to be higher than his real chances of killing it. That's just the way I'm going to go. And I did a little, if you guys are interested, I did a little video of how I analyzed my sheets with respect to today's slate. And that's just kind of where I came up with. I think, again, gun to my head, who scores the most? Probably Nola, right? Gun to my head, who's the best player? I don't know, probably Nola. But I think given the way ownership's going to play out, I am going to be going elsewhere. And when I do MME builds, depends on how much ownership fade I want to go for. I'll end up probably not getting that much of him either.
Right.
Like you said, I mean, it's very rare that the chalk pitcher is in Yankee Stadium. And yeah, he's been good and whatever. I certainly am not going to tell people that he's a terrible player and he's a terrible pitcher or anything like that. But I think I don't know. That's the way I'm going. I think I have better options today. So I'll leave it at that. You can play Nola, totally chill, totally fine, but it's probably not going to be my top.
Yeah. I hear you. I think that there's the upside in that we've seen this Yankee lineup struggle, and also just the leash and the fact that he's going to be facing mostly righties and hardly any good lefties, which Nola's always been awesome against righties and struggled a little bit with lefties. He's gotten better against lefties. I do have him very highly, so we're a little different there, but I certainly am open to some other guys. And we're going to want some bats, I think, in this next game, assuming the weather holds out, because
Dude, that place is a freaking bandbox, man. Like,
yeah, we get the Boston kid right off the bat too, who hit 2 home runs his last like 90 games in the minor leagues, and he comes right off the bat and hits a home run in the first inning with the cheap guy. I was like, oh my god! And after I said don't, but then I did correct it on our live show and said we did want to play him if he's batting second. Unfortunately, I was lucky enough to get onto Kike, which is what saved me on DraftKings. So assuming Duran still hits second, that would probably be the value that stands out the most in this game. But really, you're wanting to stack both sides of this game, I think. And what's interesting is that even though they seemingly like obvious, I think it's going to happen again where you don't get the same ownership, especially on the Toronto side in this matchup. And you know me, I'm more than happy to take my shots at Garrett Richards. So I am definitely looking at both lineups in this one. I'm curious how long they're going to let Hatch go. I'll do some digging into that, sort of like we did yesterday with some of the guys, which, by the way, if I just, sticking with Woodford, ended up being one of the higher scoring pitchers on the night, that would have been a nice move. And I didn't pull quite enough the trigger. I had, I think 12% of it or something. It wasn't nearly enough. But yeah, I'm a big fan right now of Toronto tonight, and I like Boston as well. I think it's a better spot for Toronto than it is for Boston tonight. And I am leaning a little bit more their direction at lower ownership than I would be for Boston. But with Duran being, assuming that he's batting second at an exceptional value. But again, probably more in stacks for me. I know he had a home run yesterday, and this is a tiny field, so we'll let him have a chance. But the guy literally hit 2 home runs his previous like 300 at bats. So I don't want to get crazy with it. But I'm a big fan of both these offenses. I have Toronto as one of my favorites on the slate, but I like Boston as well.
So I like both of them as well, Boston and Toronto. And like usual with Toronto, and not as much Boston sometimes, as usual, it's a question of whether you can get them in. And they actually priced down Bichette a little bit today. They priced him down. I think they priced all these guys down a little bit, except for Guerrero. But and I do think that you can get these guys in if you go a different way of pitching, which is what I'm doing. So I am again. Sometimes I look at these stacks, given the way I analyze things, based on just how cheap they are in value and stuff. And I do that when I really want to get to those top, upper echelon pitchers. But when I can screw around in pitching a little bit and not have to pay up, then I'm less concerned with how cheap those guys are, and more concerned of just getting all that upside. So I actually do like both Toronto and Boston, and I'm gonna probably get some amount of both of them. Like you said, that JD Moran, whatever the guy's name is he's going to stand out as a top play, I presume. And I don't know. I'll stack both these teams, honestly.
Yeah, I like both of them too. And it's the usual guys for me. One thing that does stand out is I think Teoscar is getting a little bit too cheap in the outfield. So I would have he and Vlad as my favorite two from this stack, assuming that it's they're all going to be fairly lowish owned. And then on Boston's side, I just think that JD Martinez at 4.6 is kind of a steal. It's kind of ridiculous actually that he's this cheap, and I don't really understand why they keep dropping his price. But he would be my preferred guy in Boston, along with the Duran, and then you get into the Kike and Verdugo. Kike is a streak hitter, so I'm going to jump on him while he's red hot. But he and Verdugo are both really cheap. So that's sort of two of the guys I'd be looking to use. Unfortunately, they're all outfielders, so you're going to have to try and find different ways to get different in the infield. I still think the right strategy is to try to stack the infield if you can and use the outfielders. There's just so many good outfield plays every night.
Yeah, I agree with Teoscar, by the way, as being probably one of the cheaper of them. Although I could argue that Bichette at 5K is pretty cheap.
I agree. There's lots of good shortstops too, and lots of good outfielders. So it's both similar to me.
Okay.
All right, so we don't know who's pitching yet for the Mets, and I'm guessing this is. I mean, it's going to be a bullpen game. It's just how much of their bullpen do they have left after yesterday? like the long game, all the runs scored. Regardless of who's pitching, who I have stock as pitching right now, and it's going to be a bullpen game. You've got the same ridiculous value on Tyler Naquin, who's been awesome. He had 5 hits yesterday. So he would be the preferred guy over Duran for me, at much lower ownership, which is interesting. And then you get the Winker in there, who's also way too cheap again in the outfield, unfortunately. You've got the cheap price on Suarez. It's almost like they're pricing him for DeGrom or something here. And then Castellanos, if he makes the lineup, which he didn't yesterday, but he did pinch hit in the 10th inning or 11th inning. So I really like Cincinnati, depending on, even in a bullpen game, but I probably am looking more at 2 to 4 mans rather than the full 5, just because, like I say, I don't always like to fully stack against straight up bullpen games. I want a game to turn into an ugly bullpen game where team's down by 9, the team scored 9 runs already. And then on the other side, Wade Miley's actually been solid enough to where I'm not going to go crazy and pick on him. I will just say that Pete Alonso is an awesome play and definitely stands out as my second favorite first base play.
Yeah, so once again, like the same dude, right? So Naquin, Winker, I'm going to other teams, but Naquin, Winker, Duran, Calhoun, like all these guys, again, coming in from yesterday and are also cheap. And then Brantley, 3,200, you already mentioned McCutchen, right? So the outfield is just kind of like rife with all these value plays. So I do think that Cincinnati rates to be one of the top values, again, if you need it, right? And so if you want to play something like, here's the problem, you want to play, say, Darvish and Nola, then you can play these Cincinnati guys pretty easily, honestly. And with given that, I think they're going to get some ownership along, obviously Seattle's going to get someone there, Colorado or whatever, but Colorado also, we'll get there, I guess. But I think Cincinnati's going to rate to be a really, really good value. And as a result, they're probably going to get owned. If I were going to play the Nola, that's the problem. If I were going to play the Nola Darvish combination, I would say the Reds represent really strong play, but then I'm like probably chalk over chalk, which I don't think is the right move.
Right.
So, but with that said, Naquin, Winker, like I said, Suarez, I think Castellanos, I hope maybe he gets back in the lineup today. And then and India as well.
Nice. Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. And I'm not going to play Wade Miley today. If he was a little bit cheaper, I would take some shots on him just because he's actually been pretty good in real life. And the Mets have a lot of lefties in their lineup. But I just think that it's not the wrong price. All right, Baltimore, Tampa Bay. Is this a time you finally feel comfortable to unleash McClanahan, or are we going to still hold out on him? What are your thoughts sort of on this pitching?
Yeah, all of it. He's one of the guys I'm playing that I was mentioning, I was kind of alluding to earlier. He's going to be one of my SPs, and I just have him rated very similar to these other guys, and he's going to be lower owned than Nola and Darvish. I don't know why he can't be. And maybe Baltimore. Yeah, Baltimore. They did a good job against hitting what's his name, Yarbrough yesterday. But Yarbrough's doesn't throw at 100.
Right.
It's just a different type of pitcher. And I talked about this the other a couple of weeks ago when and again, this is my theory that when you go from like a kind of a junky guy to a fast guy, or a fast guy to a junky guy, it might put a little pressure on the hitters. So I like him a lot. He's going to be one of my top 2 guys, and I'm not going to get to Tampa hitting, and I'm not going to get to Baltimore.
Yeah, the only negative I have on McClanahan is that, again, like we had with Yarbrough, that is similar, is that you're just going to have a ton of righties. Now, he's got the strikeout stuff even against righties, so I'm not as worried as I was. But I do think, yeah, I agree with you. He's one of the guys near the top of the list for me. On the Tampa side, look, John Means is a good pitcher and a guy who I'll be using later on in the year. I don't see a reason to go after and try and pick on him. Tampa Bay has some explosive guys. I think the obvious play here would be Wander Franco or Rosarena, but I don't think that I'm going to end up getting to any of it today, realistically.
Okay.
Texas and Detroit. Detroit. So we've got Skubal and Dunning, and I could make a pretty good argument, I think, for either of them. I've been on the Skubal train. I feel like this is a good lineup that he matches up well with. He's a little bit more expensive than I'd love to pay for him, but he does have the strikeout upside. It's Texas with lefties who are going to strike out against Skubal. And then you've got Dunning on the other side, who just seems a little too cheap against a Detroit team that we know can struggle. Yeah, they don't always put up 15 runs, I promise. But Dunning is, he's been pretty solid lately. He put up 20 in his last time out against the same team. As you can argue that hurts or helps, however you look at it. It's been 2 weeks since he pitched. Always a little bit of a cap on how much use he gets. I'll point out that Skubal has the same strikeout projection as McClanahan, and it's 6.5, which is pretty high. So I do like Skubal. I do have a little bit of interest in Dunning. I don't know where they're going to end up on the final board. We'll do it as we, at the end of the show. But I think I have Skubal as one of the guys who I'm definitely looking at using. And I'm not really interested in the bats in this game. How about you?
Yeah, so I can tell you where Skubal's going to end up. He's going to end up in the second pitcher spot for me. So those are the two guys that I was kind of alluding to the whole time. And these are the two guys I'm going to play in the bigger stuff. That's what I'm doing. And I think I'm benefiting sort of for the fact that I won't say missed out, but I wasn't quite as on Skubal like all those times he was 6,800, 6,900.
Right.
Because I don't think, oh my God, why did boy, it's a little too expensive for me now. I don't even know anything about it. I'm like, okay, he looks good right now. Maybe he would have, yeah, sure, he'd be better at 6,700 or whatever. But I like him a lot. I think that he's, again, this is kind of be my pairing. Again, I'm gonna come short of saying exactly what I'm doing, obviously, because things can obviously change. I don't want to get too much like that. But that's what I'm gonna do. He's my other main SP2, and I want to get up to those hitters that we just kind of alluded to. And as as good a play as Darvish is, and as good a play as Nola is, the fact of the matter is that we'll go back to Skubal and McClanahan. I mean, like they certainly have a shitload better matchup than the aforementioned Nola and Darvish, right? So that's where I'm going. And as much as Detroit just man, they just love doing it, don't they? Just freaking putting it on freaking pitchers that people play. I'm not gonna do any hedge stacks with Detroit, but I do like. What's interesting about against Dunning. The thing about Dunning, which again was very surprising to me, was last time that he pitched, I had this impression of him not having any strikeout upside, and he had a really, really high strikeout prop, and he ended up like getting there. I guess he strikes out more people than I thought, and
he does.
So he's in play. I don't have him as my favorite, but I'll tell you this: I think I'd rather play Dunning than pay up for those other pitchers. So for me, it's McClanahan and Skubal, and then I think Dunning's totally in play.
Yeah, I do. Speaking of K props, I'll post this later in my bets of the day on TrueDFS.com. But I think Dunning at over 4.5 strikeouts is a good bet, especially you got Adam Hamari behind the plate as of right now, who's an extreme pitchers umpire, which makes me like the pitching even more in this game.
Really? Oh, so God.
I can get behind that. All right. So the other natural SP1 is going to come from this next game, which some of us threw away a few cheap lineups in, but I didn't throw away any big lineups with. And all of those had San Diego stacks. So that was that way that I was going to do it. Darvish is pretty clearly the second best pitcher or best pitcher on the slate. Either one, I guess you'd argue he's probably the best.
Yep.
Atlanta's not the same without Acuna, but they do have they still have some lefty power. They still have decent hitters. They can work counts. I still think Darvish is an excellent option. And it's interesting. There's no K prop on him right now. One guy, Kyle Muller, this guy has really good strikeout stuff in general. I'm not going to play him. If he was like 5.3, I would consider him.
He's 8,300?
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. But I do think that maybe because the perception people know he's pretty good, that you're going to get lower ownership on the San Diego stack. And it's a huge park upgrade for San Diego. These guys, they've roughed up the best pitchers in baseball. They're used to having to face the Dodgers and Giants, two of the best teams in baseball. Arguably the two best teams in baseball right now. And you're going to get these guys at lower ownership than you usually would. And obviously, the stacks I've mentioned have been pretty expensive with the exception of Cincinnati. But I think San Diego is an excellent team to take some shots on. And you can play Grisham down at the bottom at 3.3 on the lefty-lefty. You can play Myers at 3.6, who no one's going to play. I do think people will play some Pham and Tatis, but I don't think people are going to play as much Machado today. I'm willing to take shots against these young pitchers who are talented with an offense like the Padres here. So I really like the Padres. They're really close to Cincy for me, depending on what ends up happening with the Mets starting rotation in that matchup. So I'm a big fan of. I like Darvish a lot. I probably am like with the field where he'll be probably in the 30 to 40% range, which is what I'm just early on guessing. But mostly my interest in this game is going to come from the San Diego hitters.
Yeah, I like San Diego right up there alongside those other teams, right up alongside of Toronto and Boston. Honestly, that's where I'm looking at it. And we'll get to Houston in a little bit, and we'll get to the Colorado game. But I'm in. I'll totally pick San Diego. And again, I want to stress this. You know, with respect to Darvish and Nola, like if you can find good hitting options that are not chalky, I do think that, you know, all being equal, you know, whatever, Darvish and Nola are probably the two best plays on the slate. You know. And I have no issues with playing Darvish at all.
Right.
Just, you know, the way I'm just doing, I just don't think there's a big enough difference between him and the other guys that I mentioned to justify the ownership and to get me access to some of these some of these big time hitters. So I do like Darvish, but you know, that's just where I'm coming out. And I don't like anybody from Atlanta. Let me see if there was any one-offs that I identified in this game. Pham, like you mentioned, was 3,900. He was probably my favorite of those. And Peterson, 3,100. That's the one guy I might use, but I'm probably not going to. But he's like the one guy that I would. I mean, he has 3,100. He's still batting leadoff, right? I mean, so there's that. And Tatis is priced down a little bit, 5,700, right? So
yeah, I mean that's crazy to say, but it's true. He is definitely priced down.
Yeah. So you got to talk about this rain thing again. So yesterday, I X'd both teams out and didn't play a share of any of them. And I guess the game got canceled for literally no reason. I don't think it even rained. If it rained for like a second. And you got a very similar forecast for tonight.
Right.
And you can look at it one of two ways. You could say that, oh, there's no way they do that again.
Right.
But you know, what's the Einstein, right? It's what's the definition of insanity is doing the same thing time and time again, expecting a different result. You know, like if you go too nutso, say, you know, with that narrative and play Darvish, whatever, you're not allowed to complain if the same thing happens. You know,
right?
Same decision makers. You know, even though so it's that's the one constant is the same decision makers.
Right.
So just watch the weather again. I'm fortunate that I don't know how much I'm going to play. So again, I'm just going to probably exit again. But just watch out for that.
Yep. Absolutely keep an eye on the weather later on that one, because I'm looking at the same thing that you are right now with that. Dallas Keuchel and Bailey Ober in this Minnesota-Chicago game. Now, I'm a little surprised at the run total here. I know Ober's had his ups and downs, but I'm sort of surprised that the White Sox have a 5-run total. I'm not finding as much in this game as maybe other people are. I have to draw a line somewhere. I actually don't think that they're going to be played that much, but I'm having trouble at who exactly I really want to play. Keuchel is sort of like, yeah, he doesn't give up a ton of home runs, and even though he doesn't strike a lot of guys out, it's not the most exciting play in the world. I do think if Mitch Garver is back, which he may be, that does improve this Minnesota lineup quite a bit. But I'm sort of struggling with who I would really actually want to play. And then against Ober on the other side, I tend to play the White Sox hitters against lefties more often because they crush lefties. And all these guys are fine. I just have the other guys ahead of them. That's basically where I stand on this one.
Yeah, I didn't get so much of anything here. The whole game for me was kind of a cross-off. With respect to pitching and with respect to stacks, let me look for a second just to see if anything stands out for Minnesota or Chicago near the top of my one-off board, and I don't really see anything. So I'm prepared to move on.
Yeah, Vaughn and Sheets are the Sheets. We have to just keep playing them. Vaughn and Sheets are the two guys who are cheap that I was interested in taking a shot on, but not even like overwhelmingly excited about it. Maybe that will change as the day goes on, but certainly see the viability in these stacks. I just don't think I'll be doing it myself. All right.
Just pause for just a sec.
Yes, sir. All right. So Cleveland, Houston. I think there will be some interest in Garcia. It's a little more than I want to pay for him personally. I just prefer the other guys just beneath him. But I certainly understand the argument for him. He's got the strikeout upside. Another guy with a 6.5 K prop. Most of my interest in this game, I actually love McKenzie as a pitcher. He was great for me last time against Kansas City. He's deceiving and he can be tricky. I do feel like this Houston offense is a tough offense for him, and I have a little bit of interest in stacking against him with Houston, but I think that might be fairly popular. But I still have Houston as one of the teams I'm looking at. How about you?
I agree with that completely. I think Garcia is too expensive. I think that McKenzie maybe a different slate or whatever, a different price, different team. But yeah, Houston's going to show up, and they're you put Brantley at 3,200. I mean, they're just going to show up.
Right.
And then Straw 2K, he makes the stack kind of work. So again, it allows you to pay up for maybe the overpriced guys. So yeah, I'll have some of that. I'll definitely have some of that. They're not going to be my top option, but at the end 20 lineups, I'm definitely going to have some.
Yep, same page here. All right. And yeah, well, Brantley was the one who stood out to me as a value play the most.
Yep.
Chicago and St. Louis, Trevor Williams and Oviedo. I'm a little surprised again to see the run total quite as low as it is, but I don't have a ton of interest in this spot. I did end up using, I had played a Patrick Wisdom one-off, who I just love this guy because he's always low owned and he's got tons of power. No one ever wants to play him batting sixth at third base, but I could see getting behind a little bit of the Cubs because, Rizzo's cheap. They're cheap enough. I'm not finding myself in love with these stacks as much as I was the earlier ones, but maybe a mini stack from the Cubs would be my most interest in this game.
Yeah, at most. I didn't really get to too much of this game. This is kind of a cross-off, for me at least.
Yep. That's I think where seems like it always ends up that way with the Cubs and the Cardinals, but probably for good reason. Okay,
it's like the Pacers and the Cavs.
Yeah. So now we run into the spot that I'm dealing with as the most difficult spot of the day. Is it difficult? No. The truth is, if you're not playing some Herman Marquez, however we're going to pronounce it today, I like him. I like him for the over on strikeouts. I think that you could make an argument with him versus all these pitchers. For those of you who don't, believe it, check out his game log. Like, this guy has not been just good at home. He's been like one of the best pitchers in baseball, not just at home too, by the way. I mean, he has put up in his last games, and these are like some tough matchups. San Diego, he put up 35 last time. 35, 27, 37, 32. I mean, 19, one bad game with a -3, and then a 24, 25, 23, 31. This guy is almost always doing it for us. He's been consistent. He's too cheap for what he's been. I understand the game is in Coors Field. We don't have an umpire yet. That will dictate a little bit of my decision making. Seattle's been no hit 3 times this year by righties. I'm interested. I can't help myself. I don't see a reason to just fade a guy because he's pitching in Coors Field, who's especially this guy. It doesn't seem to matter with the way that he pitches. That cut fastball seems to still cut enough, and I'm just a fan of Marquis tonight. So I'm going to be on this one.
Yeah, this is going to be the one that I say screw my projections and jam in probably some. If I told you some of the projections have him at, it's like they haven't projected a median projection like 50% of this like lowest output. You know what I mean? Like they have him going like 12, 13. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, like it's ridiculous. So I'll probably end up forcing him in for all. Look, if we play every other Tom, Dick, and Harry against Seattle, why not play an actual good pitcher?
Right.
So yeah, I'm totally into that. I'm not gonna play. I don't think I'm gonna play any Seattle today. I don't need the value the way I'm gonna go, and I don't need the chalk if people play them. So for me, no thanks. But I will play Colorado though. So Colorado, I'll pay up for whatever they cost. It's part of my process of paying a little bit down for pitchers, so I could actually get to all those guys if I want. So I'm going to play some. Not that Gonzalez is bad, and you could even make a case for Gonzalez, maybe, but I just don't need to today. But I'll play those Colorado. I'll play McMahon. I'll play Blackburn. I'll play whoever else. Whoever else is supposed to play there. Or Rogers. So I'm definitely including Colorado in my stats. But I think it's Marquee. I totally agree with you, and Colorado, but I'm not playing it this year.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So I actually, even though I mentioned the marquee, which I do like, in other lineups, because of the price of Seager, Haniger, and Jared Clinic.
Well, Kalinick is the thing. I mean,
yeah, but you play those three guys, and you're getting cheap exposure to Coors. And I mean, look, I do like Marquee. Don't get me wrong, but there's no reason why things couldn't go south or why he couldn't give up 3 solo home runs. You know what I mean? So I just have a little bit of interest, especially in those guys. And I also can't figure out who I really want to play from Colorado outside of Trevor Story. And there's other good shortstops. So that's just what I'm trying to decide. I think Garrett Hampson is fine. I think that CJ Cron is fine. I think maybe you're better off playing the lefties if you're going to stack this team because you'll get low ownership on McMahon. And I like McMahon better than Blackman, but both of those guys will have lower ownership. Or you could use Brendan Rodgers, who I don't think people are going to play quite as much of. And then you've got Chris Owings down at the bottom of the order, who I would include in your stacks if you're going to stack Colorado. I don't have them as much of a priority, but I do think that may change as the day goes on because I can see a path where they blow up here. But Gonzalez more like gets through innings and gives up a couple home runs, and it's hard for me at these prices to know exactly which ones I want to play for that upside that aren't going to be chalk. Maybe I just have to forget about the chalk a little bit and just play the best bats, which would probably be Hampson and Story. They'll just be the highest owned as well.
You know what I might do? I might with Seattle. I might play some one-offs from there. Maybe again with my other builds, I could use a little cheap stuff. So I could play Kalenic, and even though he's going to be chalky, whatever. Moore, even France, Haniger, Seager, like you said. So yeah, I just don't need the savings. I think to play a chalky. I think there'll be chalk. Maybe there won't be that chalky. I don't know. But how is someone in Colorado not chalky?
I just don't think that. I think people are finally catching on to that. Hey, Marquez is pretty good. I don't know. Like it only took 4 years, but
yeah. But yeah, this obviously, Coors is always kind of a key game,
Yeah.
Even though Coors is like not even almost as hitter friendly as that Toronto.
Seriously, I'd rather go with the good hitters in that game.
Yep.
All right, Pittsburgh, Arizona. No interest for me on either of the pitchers here. At the same time, I'm having a really hard time finding any bats that I really like. How about you?
Yeah, as I used to say to Cliff when I was playing poker, I was thinking of doing some just terrible 3-bet shove all in or something like that for no reason. I'd always say, please someone take my mouse away. So just please don't let me play Pittsburgh tonight. I really don't want to, and I'm going to anyway. And just someone's just gonna have to just take my mouse away. That's the best thing. They suck. They can't do anything. Give me some news that it's an bad umpire, the roof is closed or whatever you're supposed to not do, because they are showing up as kind of a decent option. So that's just what my numbers are telling me. So I'll probably just play a little bit of it for spite. But aside from that, that's about all I got from this.
Love it. I'm sort of on the same page here, exactly. And yeah, I do think that guys who stood out price-wise, Ben Gamel, Cole Calhoun are both super cheap and should be in the mix of your multi-entering of your cheap guys. We have Garrett Clevenger starting against Garrett Clevenger starting for the Dodgers. It's going to be a bullpen game. Yep. Alex Wood against his former team. I'm a sucker for former team stuff. I'm not going to play Alex Wood. I don't think the Dodgers are like the worst idea in the world. I just think we don't know about what's going to happen for sure with Betts. He got scratched yesterday.
Yep.
Pollock, nobody individually stands out. It's more of a maybe I can stack this game and get away with it. Cody Bellinger and lefty is 4,500, which is a reasonable price, but I just don't see the need to go crazy because Alex Wood is pretty good. Look, if I'm playing 100 lineups, I'll have a Dodgers stack in there, but I'm not focusing on it.
That's exactly was going to be not exactly my comment, but that's my sentiment, is that if I were going to play 100 lineups, they might just kind of sneak in there. But I don't need Alex Wood. I don't need the Dodgers. I don't need the Giants in a bullpen game either. And I'll just kind of hope that I have enough points and, fade this thing, I think.
Yeah, makes sense. That makes sense to me. So real quick to recap, I'll just talk about like the guys who I have. So I have my favorite stacks as being Toronto, Cincinnati, San Diego. And I also want to mix in some Boston, Houston, maybe a mini version of the Cubs or a mini Seattle. That's what I've got. And then trying to fade Colorado, but not feeling like I need to. I'm not as interested as everybody else might be against a decent enough pitcher, although Marco Gonzalez should struggle in that kind of environment. My pitchers, I have Nola, McClanahan, Skubal, Darvish, and Marquis as my favorites. After I have Nola currently as my favorite, but I'm still flirting with that could easily end up being Darvish. Could even be Marquis or McClanahan by the end of the day. I also, again, do really like Skubal, and I have Rogers and Dunning sort of on the outside looking in. Some of my favorite individual plays, some one-off, some combos. Trey Turner, Vlad Guerrero, Teoscar, JD Martinez, Jesse Winker, Pete Alonso, Tommy Pham, Tatis, Seager, Haniger, Kalinick, Story, and let me just put Kalinick down here too. And then for value, obviously Kalinick too. Raleigh for Seattle makes it a really easy stack because he's minimum cost. Brantley, Tyler Naquin, and Duran, with guys like Zimmerman, McCutchen, Harrison, Miller, Jock Peterson, all a little too cheap.
Okay, so this is I figured out how I'm gonna not play Pittsburgh. I finally figured it out. So I was gonna say in my summary that the only way I'm gonna be playing Nola or whatchamacallit or Darvish is if I play Pittsburgh, because that'll be the only value that's gonna be that chalky, I think. So this is what we're gonna do. Okay. So I'm gonna be playing McClanahan, Skubal, Marquis, and Dunning, and there'll be $200 cash for the first person who finds a lineup of mine with any other pitcher. Okay.
Ooh, all right. I like
so there'll
that.
be no Nola, there'll be no Darvish, there'll be none of that. This is the way I avoid playing Pittsburgh. Because the only way I play Pittsburgh is if I play Nola and Darvish.
That's 8 months. That's 8 months of true DFS full site usage.
It is. But it's the only first person. So if I screw up and I misclick one guy, I can't afford like 100 people telling me that I miss. So anybody want to troll my lineup somehow and find me a lineup without those with anybody but those 4 pitchers, which include, you know what I mean? That means no Nola, no Darvish, $200 cash. And as a result, I'm going to be able to play all that good stuff that you talked about, the Torontos and the Bostons and the stuff. I'll probably be really underweight on the Reds as a result. Probably be underweight on the Seattle. But again, maybe they're not even going to be owned. Who knows? Yeah. And the other team I might get to is Houston also. So I know exactly what I'm doing tonight. So that means now someone's going to get scratched, or Anthony Davis is going to be out. Something's going to happen. And that's pretty much where I am.
All right, sounds good, guys. I will be with you at 6 Eastern time. I'm not sure Sheets will be. If I'm there, it'll be a half-hour show. If not, we'll go up to lock. And I am going to do my 5 and 5. I'm also going to put all my plays of the day up, as well as my bets of the day on TrueDFS.com. Sheets are up. So let's make some money today, guys, and hopefully we'll see you guys at the top of the leaderboards tonight.
So, Bobby, if you